Welcome into Sports Nightcap, everybody. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. We got a lot to cover. I hope you all had a great weekend. We're going to recap the NBA Finals Game 2. Kind of confirms my suspicion of exactly what the NBA Finals is looking like at this point. We're also going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. A little more drums there. Maybe the Steelers settled for Aaron Rodgers. Totally into getting him. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Also, Don Nelson has spoken. Don Nelson, the former Dallas Mavericks head coach, has spoken and decided to give his thoughts on the Anthony Davis Luka Doncic trade that everybody hated. And honestly, I'm just going to say this. I don't think Don Nelson has a lot of credibility in saying it, and I'm going to point out why. Now, as we continue, we got a lot more to talk about too. The Chicago Sky, Courtney VanderSloot is now out for the year for the Sky with a torn ACL. I'm going to talk about why it doesn't matter and why the Sky are getting waiver promoted because of a specific player who we all know who is more of a liability than anything. I'm going to dive into that because this doesn't matter. And James Cook is unhappy in Buffalo. So we got a lot to discuss. James Cook is unhappy in Buffalo. That's one we're going to bring up. We're going to break down what's happening with him and the Bills and if things will get settled before the year starts. I don't think it will, and I don't think the Bills should worry about it. But we're going to start, obviously, with what we just watched, which was the NBA Finals Game 2. The Oklahoma City Thunder rebounded from a heartbreaking Game 1 loss to beat the Indiana Pacers 123-107 in Game 2. They now head back to Indiana with the series tied 1-1. Obviously, they should be up 2-0, but Tyrese Halliburton pulled a Tyrese Halliburton when they lost in Game 1. That has been happening. The question was, going into this game, is Oklahoma City going to be more like the Bulls in the 1991 NBA Finals or the Magic in the 1995 NBA Finals? The reason I say that is, in both cases, the Bulls and the Magic, heavy favorites, had home court advantage, lost Game 1 because they didn't play up to their standards. The Magic melted down. By the way, both lost Game 1 in heartbreaking fashion, should have won it. The Magic melted down. The Magic did not recover. If you don't know that story, it was the Shaq Penny era with the Magic. Nick Anderson missed 4 free throws at the end. If he hits 1, the Magic win the game. But he misses all 4, and then Houston hits a game-tying 3, wins it at overtime. Magic never recover. They lose in 4. The Bulls, meanwhile, in 91, they lose Game 1 of the NBA Finals to the Lakers. Michael loses to Magic. All the stories are out there at the time. The Bulls still haven't gotten a ring, but they seem to have gotten over the hump with the Pistons. They get to the finals. They lose Game 1 to the Lakers, and the narrative is back out that Michael Jordan is a scoring champion who will never be an actual champion. Well, he and the Bulls respond by winning the next 4 games and absolutely dominating. Some of the narrative is a little bit Disneyfied because they'll be like, oh, Scottie Pippen was put on Magic Johnson and guarded him 94 feet. That's a Phil Jackson spin narrative. No, the Bulls are just a better team overall, and that's why they won. So what was Oklahoma City going to do? After watching Game 2, I'm pretty sure Oklahoma City is more like the 1991 Chicago Bulls than they are the 1995 Orlando Magic. One, because they actually won a finals game and are the better team. But also, I think we're overrating the fact that Oklahoma City, in their defense, we're not paying attention to the fact that they just didn't, like the Bulls in 91, they just didn't play a good game to their standards in Game 1. Now, they dominated the first half. They forced, I think, 19 turnovers in the first half of Game 1. They looked like they were all over Indiana, but we're forgetting this. Oklahoma City in Game 1 shot below 40%. They were just rusty. They were just rusty in that game because they had been off for 8 days. So they weren't shooting the ball well. And I figured that once they got their shooting back up to snuff, they would be fine. And they got their shooting back up to snuff in this one, as they were 48.8% from the field. They were 14 of 36 from 3, 38.9%, significantly better than the first game. Shot 88% from the free throw line. When you take all of this into account, you do have to say that, look, their shooting just improved to a level of where it needed to improve. And by the way, the 3-point shooting wasn't terrible the first game. They were 11 to 30, but obviously 11 to 30 is not as good as 14 of 36. And more importantly than that, they were nearly 50% from the field in general when they were below 40% in the last game. So I think when you take that into account, I think Oklahoma City honestly was just rusty in that one. And you saw it because they didn't even need to force that many turnovers. They forced 15. Okay, fair enough. Came away with 10 steals, but it was really their offense was just back up to snuff, being more efficient. Alex Caruso off the bench balled out, was 6 of 11 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, had 20 points on the day. Alex Caruso was incredible. Also, Aaron Wiggins comes in, 5 of 8 from 3. 5 of 8 from 3, 6 of 11 from the field, 18 points. Aaron Wiggins, Alex Caruso do it from the bench. All and the starting lineup, Chet Holmgren, 6 of 11, 15 points on the day, and Jalen Williams, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 19 points. But the star of the show, as is usual, was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was only 1 of 4 from 3, but he had 8 assists, 4 steals. That's right, 4 steals, only 2 turnovers, 34 points, a block, was 11 of 12 from the free throw line, 11 of 21 from the field overall. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doing what a star should do. With this in mind, I'm just going to tell you guys, Oklahoma's winning this. Oklahoma City is going to win this series in 6 games. They may not lose another game in this series. Oklahoma City may not lose another game in the NBA Finals, despite that first heartbreak. Sorry, let me start that over. Oklahoma City may not lose another game in the NBA Finals, despite that game 1 heartbreak. Okay, Oklahoma City's the better team. They're mentally tougher. They were rusty in game 1, shooting below 40% from the field. They're now close to 50% after game 2. And when they're shooting the way they should, it showed in this game. Indiana showed in game 2 they can't hang with Oklahoma City when Oklahoma City is shooting well from the field. I think this is going to be Oklahoma City the rest of the way. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the biggest star on the court. Oklahoma City is definitely winning this in 6 games, and they may win it in 5. They're just the better team overall. Also, I want to point this out about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's better in the playoffs than Tyrese Halliburton. You can look at the data, guys. SGA has a better PER, a higher true shooting percentage, higher win shares per 48 minutes, and higher box plus minus than Tyrese Halliburton in the playoffs. Now, Halliburton does have the better clutch gene, as his overall analytics are increased in the playoffs. I think his PR goes from 20.8 to 21.5, something like that, whereas SGA's goes down a little bit. It's normal for your analytics to go down in the playoffs because you're playing tougher competition. But SGA is so much better as a player in general that even with his dip in production in the playoffs, it's still better than Tyrese Halliburton's increase in production in the playoffs. So with that in mind, SGA is a better playoff player than Tyrese Halliburton. I would take SGA in the playoffs over Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton in this game, by the way, just want to point this out. 6 assists, 5 turnovers. And 2 of those assists were meaningless late in the fourth quarter. At one point, he had 4 assists and 5 turnovers in the fourth quarter. Yeah, he had 17 points. Yeah, he was 7 of 13 from the field. Yeah, he was 3 of 8 from 3, but 6 assists, 5 turnovers. Sorry, you can't have that. Can't have that happening, guys. Tyrese Halliburton should not be having 5 turnovers to 6 assists. That is a really, 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 really bad ratio, and that was a big problem in this game. People want to talk about Tyrese Halliburton and his clutch gene and how he hits all these game-winning shots. And there's some merit to it. There's some validity, but it's massively overrated. Tyrese Halliburton's clutch gene is massively overrated. Tyrese Halliburton does step his game up in the playoffs. He does improve his analytics across the board in the playoffs. However, his clutch gene is not what people think it is. While he is tied for second since 1997 in number of shots made to tie or take the lead in the final 5 seconds of the fourth quarter overtime in the NBA playoffs with 5. He's tied with Reggie Miller and LeBron James. I'm sorry, he's tied with, let me start that over. While Tyrese Halliburton has had 5 shots to tie or take the lead in the final 5 seconds of the fourth quarter overtime in the NBA playoffs, which is tied for second with Reggie Miller since 1997, only to LeBron James, who has 8. By the way, y'all say LeBron James is a clutch. He has 8 shots to tie or take the lead in the final 5 seconds of the fourth quarter or overtime in the NBA playoffs. A lot of Tyrese Halliburton's shots are flukes. One of Tyrese Halliburton's shots of those 5 was the Knicks game in game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the ball bounced off the back of the rim and landed in. That wasn't a clutch shot. That was a lucky shot by Tyrese Halliburton. That's not a clutch gene. That was sheer, pure luck. Tyrese Halliburton's career PER in the playoffs is 21.5. That wouldn't even be top 30 all time. His win shares per 48 minutes, 0.176. His box plus minus, 5.6. Neither of those would be top 25 all time. None of them are top 10 among active players. So Tyrese Halliburton has been more the beneficiary of luck than an actual clutch gene in the playoff. The reason he's been a beneficiary of luck is he's the product of being a good shooter, which he is. I bow down. He's a good shooter. and having the chance at a lot of late game winning shots because Rick Carlisle, the Pacers coach, is the best coach of the last 30 years in the NBA and makes great fourth quarter adjustments to allow his outmatched teams to make comebacks late and give his team's chance to win it at the end, at which point you will go to Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton on any other team would just be any other player. It would be forgettable. This is not indicative of some clutch gene. This is indicative of being lucky and being in the right place at the right time and playing for the coach that is smart enough to help his undermanned team have a chance to win at the end, at which point he has a chance to take more game-winning shots. Tyrese Halliburton's not unclutch, to be fair. As I pointed out, he increases his analytics across the board. He's just not as clutch as people think. His PER, box plus minus, and win shares for 48 minutes would all be outside of the top 25 all-time and outside of the top 10 among active NBA players when you just look at the playoff stats. Tyrese Halliburton is not as clutch as people think. He's not that deadly, and we've got to stop this. It's overrated. His clutch gene is overrated. SGA is a better player in the playoffs. LeBron is a better player in the playoffs. Michael Jordan was a better player in the playoffs. Okay, I'm sorry. Tyrese Halliburton is getting way overblown because of the moments that have happened, but the coaching by Rick Carlisle has had more to do with those moments than Tyrese Halliburton himself. I just have to point that out. He's massively overrated. Okay, moving on. Going to the NFL a little bit. Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. Some interesting takes have come out about whether or not the Steelers were truly interested in Aaron Rodgers, because it sounds like they might not have been. According to reports, the Steelers were not targeting Aaron Rodgers first. Now, this explains why it took so long for Aaron Rodgers to sign with the Steelers. By the way, Aaron Rodgers is making headlines by not missing minicamp, to his credit, unlike a previous Packer quarterback who acted like a diva, who didn't want to do any of the camps. But according to a report from Adam Schefter, Aaron Rodgers was the third option for the Steelers, behind Matthew Stafford and Justin Fields. Look, I'm going to say this up front, and I have to say this regularly when we talk about Aaron Rodgers. I'm not a fan of him. He's annoying. I felt he got away with a lot more of diva-like tendencies than a lot of other quarterbacks did back in the day because people felt bad for him because of the way Brett Favre left. Aaron Rodgers became a diva in Green Bay and got away with it because people felt bad for the way he was treated amidst the Brett Favre saga. And then Aaron Rodgers in many ways became Brett Favre. That does not mean that Aaron Rodgers is not a hell of a quarterback still and that he won't work out with the Steelers. I already broke down recently why I think Aaron Rodgers will work out. His production last year was actually pretty good with the Jets. We really overrated the Jets' talent as a whole. It wasn't where people think it is. And the Steelers have, I think, a better overall offensive line. Aaron Rodgers, his biggest strength now going into this year, he's got a quicker release. He doesn't have the same arm strength or mobility, but his release has actually improved dramatically. It's one of the better ones in the NFL. And he is a smart player. And by the way, again, he shows up for minicamp. He's not acting like a full-on diva. He's willing to work with the team to get where he needs to go. The Steelers are lucky. The Steelers are lucky that they did not sign Matthew Stafford or Justin Fields. Okay, I'm sorry, but Aaron Rodgers is significantly better than both. First of all, you want to worry about age with Aaron Rodgers, but you're going to sign Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's only 3 years younger than Aaron Rodgers, and it's not like he's like a Hall of Famer to the level of Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers at decreased production is still better than Matthew Stafford. They were peers for most of their careers. As a matter of fact, Aaron Rodgers' first year starting in the NFL was 2008. Matthew Stafford became a starter in 2009. And let's be fair, Matthew Stafford has had a massive drop-off over the past few years. Matthew Stafford he had a massive drop-off over his past few years in Detroit. Matthew Stafford's production is a product of Sean McVay, okay? Matthew Stafford's production is a complete and total product of Sean McVay. Before that, it was a product of being able to throw to Calvin Johnson. There was a period between not having Calvin Johnson and not playing for Sean McVay where Matthew Stafford's QBR, when he actually was able to play a full season, took a total dip. And I'm talking about the 2018 year where it was 51.3, which was really, 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 really bad, okay? Aaron Rodgers, meanwhile, sticking with him, has, to be fair, been productive throughout his career, even last year with a 48 QBR coming off an Achilles tear. And playing for an old team was still a very good quarterback. Now, look, Aaron Rodgers' total QBR in 2022 was 41.3. Really, 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 really bad. Was playing with a bunch of young receivers who had not fully adjusted to the system that Green Bay was running at the time and actually had a strong finish, just couldn't get over the hump to get to the playoffs. However, it was 48 this past year, and it's probably only going to go up this year. Let's not forget that in 2020 and 2021, he had a 79.8 and a 74.1 QBR. So Aaron Rodgers is a much better pickup than Matthew Stafford. The other option for the Steelers, if Matthew Stafford wasn't going to work out, Justin Fields, who they wanted to stick with. Justin Fields sucks. All right, I'm sorry. He's not a good quarterback. His total QBR, yes, it was 65.8, totally skewed. That was only 6 starts. You can't really judge a total QBR on 6 starts alone. Still worse than his second year in Chicago when we all thought he was terrible and we all thought he was worth giving up, which he was eventually ditched in favor of Caleb Williams. This speaks to why the Steelers have been mediocre for so long. They stick with the mediocre talent and they stay just above water to where if the right pieces fall into place, they'll win a Super Bowl every generation. They won 2 with Ben Roethlisberger, okay? But let's not forget this with the Steelers, and this is the way the franchise is run. The Pittsburgh Steelers as a franchise run as a franchise on mediocrity to slightly above average with really good coaches who try to maximize that mediocrity. Before Bill Cowher won his Super Bowl with Ben Roethlisberger, he did, how about this? Before Bill Cowher got Ben Roethlisberger when he was in Pittsburgh, he was off and on as a successful head coach throughout his career with the Steelers. Yes, he led them to a Super Bowl and they lost to the Cowboys in 95. He also had 3 straight years where he missed the playoffs from 98 to 2000, going 7-9, 6-10, 9-7. While he went 13-3 with Cordell Stewart in 2001, and then 10-5-1 with Tommy Maddox in 2002, went 6-10 in 2003. Then turns around and goes 15-1 in 2004, 11-5 in 2005 to win the Super Bowl, and goes 8-8 in 2006. He was 149-90 throughout his career in Pittsburgh. That's a 623 winning percentage. Not bad. Not going to blow you away. Okay, missed the playoffs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times of his 15 years. That's, again, once every 3 years missing the playoffs. Again, that's not mediocre. That's not 50-50. That's above average. But he's not, again, wasn't some lock to do it every year. Mike Tomlin, since then, going to Pittsburgh, okay? Mike Tomlin has missed the playoffs. Guess what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's missed the playoffs 6 times in 18 years. Again, just like Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin misses the playoffs once every 3 years. Because the Steelers are an above-water franchise. They have just enough to be good enough to make the playoffs with the right coaching, which they have, but they rarely have enough to win a Super Bowl. And that shows with the fact that they preferred Justin Fields or Matthew Stafford to Aaron Rodgers. There's no way you can look at those 3 quarterbacks just with your eyes and think, even at 41, Aaron Rodgers is not better than Matthew Stafford and Justin Fields. He is. Even last year with the 48 total QBR, Aaron Rodgers was better than Matthew Stafford. He's got a quicker release too. He's better at getting rid of the ball. He's going to be better this year. I think Aaron Rodgers is a great pickup for the Steelers overall. I said that from the start. I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan as a person, but I'm willing to say and admit that Aaron Rodgers will do what you need him to do. So Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers are lucky that they messed up and landed Aaron Rodgers. Are they as lucky as the Bulls from messing up and landing? Or the Steelers are lucky that they had to settle for Aaron Rodgers. The same way the Bulls were lucky that they had to settle for Michael Jordan. Maybe not the same. Michael Jordan won the Bulls 6 rings, but the concept is the same. Okay. And Aaron Rodgers, to be fair, I think is going to be fine in Pittsburgh. So I have no understanding as to why the Steelers are upset about the idea that they had to settle for Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry, that just doesn't make any sense. I think Aaron Rodgers is exactly the type of quarterback that they need. He fits perfectly, and regardless of his personalities, I mean, we're talking about the franchise that has Terry Bradshaw, who ain't like who's got a bit of a weird personality himself, and also the franchise that had Ben Roethlisberger, who may have had some criminal charges. So, whatever you think of Aaron Rodgers, the person, It's not worthy of freaking out over. All right, moving on. We're going to go back to the NBA for a minute because Don Nelson has decided to trash Luka Doncic. I'm sorry. Don Nelson has decided to trash Anthony Davis. Don Nelson, former Dallas Mavericks head coach, has decided to trash Anthony Davis in the trade that the Mavs did to land Anthony Davis with Luka Doncic. Before Game 2 between the Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers on Sunday night, Don Nelson decided to make his point heard. Nelson recently accepted the Chuck Daly Lifetime Achievement Award at the NBA Finals. And he said, before Game 2, quote, "I want everybody to know I'm wearing Luka's shoes, his new shoes from Nike, and I'm wearing them in protest for the trade from Dallas. I think it was a tremendous mistake by the Dallas franchise to trade him. I want everybody to know that." For context, Don Nelson was coach of the Mavericks from 1997 through 2005. He never made the finals when he was coach of the Mavericks. He had Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, and Michael Finley for quite a few of those years. I believe from like 2000 to 2004. No, 2000 to 2003. No, 2000 to 2004. He had Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, Michael Finley. That's a two-time MVP and another. That's 3 MVPs in your starting lineup. Steve Nash twice, Dirk Nowitzki once. Didn't win a title. Didn't even make the finals during that time period. Don Nelson is not credible to make this statement because Don Nelson doesn't value players like Anthony Davis. Don Nelson is the inventor of the point forward and positionless basketball. He loves a guy like Luka who can run and shoot. Run and shoot. We're talking about the guy that coached Steve Nash, okay? Don Nelson's idea of coaching defense, particularly on the interior, is hack-a-shack. Inventing the idea that you foul a player a bunch of times if they can't hit their free throws so you don't have to worry about defending them. Don Nelson does not value somebody with the interior value that Anthony Davis brings to the table. But I'm here to tell you that it's time to retire once and for all this idea that this was a ridiculous trade for Dallas, okay? Don Nelson's Nelly ball, which is what it was known for, it really is no defense, okay? It's all flash and no substance. Which, by the way, it's funny, it's called Nelly ball because many accuse the rapper Nelly being all flash and no substance. But that's a different story. Don Nelson, and I like Nelly, has no idea what he's talking about. And many people upset about this trade are not paying attention to the analytics and the data. Anthony Davis, just this past year, had more win shares and more win shares per 48 minutes and a higher PER than Luka Doncic. Oh, but Anthony Davis isn't as reliable to play every game. Well, neither is Luka Doncic. Anthony Davis actually played one more game this past season than Luka Doncic because Luka Doncic doesn't stay in shape and it catches up to him during the season, just like James Harden, and it's actually catching up to him quicker than it caught up to James Harden. So Anthony Davis is no less healthy or reliable than Luka Doncic. And by the way, based on analytics, is as good of or as better a player or a better player than Luka Doncic. Anthony Davis has a higher true shooting percentage. Luka Doncic, the amazing shooter. I'm Don Nelson. I want the run and shoot guy that can shoot the threes, the Steve Nashes, the Dirk Nowitzkis, and everybody. Anthony Davis actually is a more efficient shooter. Despite the fact that he's a big man, he's got a higher true shooting percentage than Luka Doncic, which isn't uncommon. But at the same time, true shooting percentage neutralizes the massive field goal percentage advantage that a lot of bigs had back in the day. So Anthony Davis having a higher one means he's just in general a better scorer than Luka Doncic. Doesn't always mean that, but it means that in this case. Anthony Davis also has a ring. Yes, he won it with LeBron. But who just played with LeBron? Oh, that's right, Luka Doncic. And what did the Lakers do without LeBron? Or with Luka Doncic and LeBron? They couldn't get out of the first round. Anthony Davis, oh, and by the way, from a turnovers perspective, because where true shooting percentage can be when you judge scoring, and you have to be clear on this with analytics guys to a certain degree. Okay, when you judge scoring, if you have a lower true shooting percentage, you can still be a better scorer if you take better care of the basketball amidst your usage rate. Well, Luka Doncic turns the ball over 3.9 times per game for his career. His turnover percentage is 14. He's got a 14% turnover ratio. Anthony Davis has an 8.9% turnover ratio. And now I'm not even talking about the fact that Anthony Davis is better at blocking shots, a better rebounder, better interior defender, and just the general things on those natures. Anthony Davis is a better player than Luka Doncic. It's not close, but it's pretty clear, and it's clear enough to say that this trade was not a big deal, particularly when you consider the fact that Luka Doncic is already starting to show signs of aging at 25 because he doesn't take care of himself. So Don Nelson is just saying this out of what he truly values. There's no credibility to him. Remember, he didn't win that ring with Dallas. Rick Carlisle, again, who I think is the best coach of the last 30 years, won that ring with Dirk Nowitzki and Jason Terry in 2011. Don Nelson couldn't even get them to the finals. Even Avery Johnson got the Mavericks to the finals, okay? Now, Luka Doncic, I'm just going to say it, he's regressing to a certain level to where Luka wouldn't even, there's a chance I wouldn't put him on my all-white NBA team. All right, I'm going to talk about this Monday, but I think my all-white NBA team, you would have to have Luka play either point guard or shooting guard. Am I sure he's better than Alex Caruso or Tyler Herro? Honestly, are we sure he's better than Alex Caruso or Tyler Herro? Luka Doncic may not be an all-white NBA player anymore. Yes, it's going to be the white all-NBA team. We're going to have fun with that. We also will do the white all-time all-NBA team. And maybe to make things real difficult, we'll do the all-white American NBA team. But on the all-white NBA team, I'm not so sure Luka Doncic would make it. And I know that's crazy to say to some people, but Luka Doncic, to me, personally, is becoming a more and more overrated player by the day. I think the NBA, in the era of spacing, has placed way too much value on scoring efficiency, and I understand why, but has ignored so many other things that come with scoring efficiency. You see this in the LeBron-Michael Jordan debate, by the way. A lot of LeBron fans like to use analytics to defend LeBron because they'll say, you know, he's a better rebounder and a passer, but he's also a better scorer because he has a higher true shooting percentage. Well, one, ignoring the fact that Michael Jordan played in an era that didn't value analytics. Two, shot selection has as much to do with true shooting percentage as actual ability to shoot and score. And Michael Jordan's era, because it didn't value analytics, was going to naturally result in him not taking as many great shots, many effective high percentage shots as LeBron, whether that be the three or the layup, because the mid-range was big then. And three, Michael Jordan took better care of the basketball than LeBron James. The most insane Michael Jordan stat is actually his turnovers. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail one day. But Michael Jordan was the best at taking care of the basketball given his usage rate. And LeBron's not even close to that. Okay. That has to count in your scoring efficiency. Because while you may, it's the same with like sacks for a quarterback. A quarterback may not throw an interception. They may not throw an incomplete pass, so the rating will be high. But if they take a sack because they held onto the ball too long, it should count against them the same. It's also true with turnovers. In the NBA, it should be held against you. We have totally ignored that, and we've totally ignored the ability of scorers to pass the ball, which is how Luka Doncic gets so much love. Because guess what? Luka is not the most efficient passer. I'm just going to say that. Even though he does average for his career 8 assists a game, he doesn't always find the open man consistently. And he only averages that many because he played point guard and he was tasked with it a lot of times. But he averages too many turnovers on top of that. Like his career year for assists was 23-24 when he averaged over 9.8, when he averaged 9.8, nearly 10. But he also had 4 turnovers during that time. And I get the total rebounds. He has 8.6 because many of you are going to come at me and be like, well, he's as good of a rebounder as Anthony Davis because he's averaging 8.6. But Anthony Davis is a double-double machine for his career, averaging 10.7. So Luka is not as good, I think, personally, as Anthony Davis. I think we're really overrating Luka, given the fact that he doesn't take care of the basketball. For a point guard who averages a lot of assists, he's not as effective at finding the open man as people think. And Luka doesn't take care of his body. Very clear if you look at the way he was in the playoffs. And his production does somewhat decrease in the NBA playoffs, but I'm not going to hold that too much against him. It's not as bad as some other players. Still, I think the reason Don Nelson likes Luka is Luka's more Don Nelson type of player than Anthony Davis. Let's call it what it is. All right, let's move on. Going back to the NFL, James Cook and Buffalo. Buffalo Bills running back James Cook is unhappy with the Bills. Adam Schefter had already been reporting that James Cook was holding out, looking for a new contract. Talks are going nowhere right now. This after the fact that James Cook last year rushed for 1,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, a league-leading 16 touchdowns, and averaged 4.9 yards per attempt. James Cook's contract situation, he had signed a 4-year, $5.8 million deal with the Bills. This year, he is set to make his actual base salary is set to spike. He's set to go. He made 705 in 2022, 970 in 2023, 1.16 million in 2024, and is 5.27 in 2025. So his base salary is expected to spike to over 5 million this year. But he's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. He wants a long-term deal. He's holding out. I understand James Cook's point. I understand why he wants the long-term deal. I've talked about this in the past. I understand with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, what they've done, why he would want that. Derrick Henry was signed by Baltimore, and that turned out to be one of the biggest signings possible because Baltimore would have made the playoffs. Would have won the Super Bowl had it not been for Mark Andrews dropping a pass. Meanwhile, he leaves the Titans, and the Titans get the number 1 pick in the draft as the worst team. On the other side, the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley, and they go and win the Super Bowl because they signed it. There is a renaissance of running backs in the NFL now. There's a renaissance of successful running backs in the NFL. And a lot of this has to do with the way defenses have played recently because of the obsession and kowtowing to quarterbacks that the league has done, which has opened up more passing offenses. Defenses are a lot softer. There's a lot more defensive backs, fewer defensive linemen able to stop the run, particularly fewer linebackers out on the field. And so now there is a movement and a transition back to an elite running game if you can do it. And James Cook sees that value as he enters his 5th year, where he's set to make $5.7 million this year, and he wants to go ahead and sign an extension now. I understand it, and I have no knock on him wanting to do it. According to reports, though, the situation is not good. The bitterness is real between Cook and the organization. Schefter said that he doesn't think we'll be seeing James Cook in Buffalo anytime soon. He says the start of training camp will be the next critical moment. If they don't have a deal done there or by then, does James Cook show up for training camp? Does he risk the penalties that come along with the collective bargaining agreement if he doesn't show up? That's a really good question. Now, after showing James Cook the most amount of respect I could possibly show him, I'm sorry, James Cook, Buffalo should renegotiate. They should not renegotiate at all. James Cook, I'm a fan of as a player and as a person, and I think there's a place for him as a valuable running back in the NFL. But James Cook is not an irreplaceable running back. Very few are. He didn't even average 5 yards a carry this past year. Now, you can point out he led the league in touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns, first of all, touchdowns in general, rushing and passing, are just overrated stats, okay? They are. There's a lot that goes into that. You get a bunch of 1-yard goal line plays and you run for a touchdown, you're going to get a rushing touchdown, okay? Moving the ball is more important than the actual touchdowns themselves and these stats. And so rushing touchdowns is an overrated stat. Also, rushing for 1,009 yards, it's not like you rush for 1,500, 1,600 yards, is also not worthy of a big long-term deal. Yeah, I would let James Cook walk. I would. Now, the value to James Cook, to a lot of people, is that Josh Allen is losing a step. He's not going to be able to run the way he once was. He had 531 rushing yards last year and 12 touchdowns. Who cares? Who cares? You don't spend even in the era and in the Renaissance era of running backs, you don't want to overspend on running backs. You don't want to spend too much on what they bring to the table because they're still replaceable, particularly given the fact that a huge part of the running game comes to the interior offensive line. I just talked about the renaissance of the Derrick Henrys of the world. Well, what's really forgotten about is that the Titans' best year ever when they had Derrick Henry during the regular season was 2021 when they got the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Guess what? Derrick Henry missed the final 7 games of that year with an injury, and then he came back for the playoffs, and they lost the first round of the playoffs to the Bengals, their first playoff game. Why were they still so good? Because their interior blocking was fine. They had Ben Jones, Roger Saffold, Nate Davis. It didn't matter that Derrick Henry went down for half the season, okay? Because the biggest thing for them was that interior offensive line. And it allowed for Deontay Foreman to rush for 566 yards, and average 4.3 yards per attempt. It allowed for Dontrell Hilliard to average 6.3 yards per attempt, and it allowed for Ryan Tannehill to stay elite. Now, yes, they did have A.J. Brown to throw to open things up, but the point of the matter was Derrick Henry was more than anything a beneficiary of that system, as we saw, as good of a running back as he was. So if you wouldn't see that difference for Derrick Henry, you're not going to see it for James Cook. So I'm sorry. I think Buffalo should let James Cook walk. I respect and understand James Cook's decision to want more money, but he's not worth it. You can find another guy if you're Buffalo. It's not that hard. And truth be told, you should never be wasting time buying and trying to get a running back of that nature. Okay, I'm just sorry, but the running backs that you would open the checkbook for have to be beyond elite. Buffalo will be fine. I firmly believe that. They still have a good overall offense with Sean McDermott leading the way as the head coach, and they don't necessarily need to up the money to get James Cook. Okay, they just don't. And Ray Davis, by the way, is in Buffalo as we speak. He just completed his rookie season at 5'8", 220. He's a power back, not the same level of shiftiness. We'll acknowledge that James Cook has. That's fair, but he can still be very effective. And then Buffalo has other options they can go to too, because again, it's just not hard to find a running back. I would say that Ty Johnson, a veteran, I think he can do what James Cook did. As a matter of fact, for those who don't know, Ty Johnson averaged more yards a carry last year, 5.2. It's a backup. So I'm sorry. Love you, James Cook. Respect everything about what you're trying to do. But if I'm Buffalo, when you're knocking on the door of the Super Bowl, don't hamper that just to, out of emotions and respect for a player, open a checkbook for him. He doesn't deserve it. He's not worth it. Buffalo needs to move on if James Cook is going to force them to. Finally, let's talk some WNBA action. And yeah, I don't mind talking some WNBA action beyond just Caitlin Clark, because there's some interesting more news regarding the Chicago Sky. Chicago Sky point guard Courtney VanderSloot is out for the year due to a torn ACL. VanderSloot is an icon with the franchise. She went down with a knee injury just minutes into the team's 79-52 loss to the Indiana Fever, ironically, which is Caitlin Clark's team on Saturday. Caitlin Clark obviously still hasn't been playing. But Courtney VanderSloot, the reason this is relevant is because obviously Chicago is the team that Angel Reese plays on. And so it's kind of interesting how this all works out. But VanderSloot is down for the year. She's the veteran, the leader of the team, all of that. It doesn't matter. One, Courtney VanderSloot is old. I just pointed out she is 37. I'm sorry, excuse me, 36. Okay, she's 36 years old. She's back in Chicago after helping them win a title in 2021 and spending the last 2 years in New York. She just won a title with the New York Liberty. So she's back as the franchise icon. And she had a great career with them during the 2010s. The highlight was in 2020, where she averaged 13.6 points and 10 assists. And then the next year, 10.5 points and 8.6 assists when they went and won the title. And then last year with New York, she won a title. But in New York, her points per game average dipped to single digits for the first time since 2014 in over a decade, where she was at 6.4 points per game and just 4.8 assists. Her production had dipped to a significant degree. And then even in the playoffs, she was at 5.3 points per game and 2.5 assists per game, but she didn't start any playoff games, to be fair. The point is, Courtney VanderSloot has taken a major step back, which is fine. She's just old. She's the veteran. She's kind of the leader of the team. And so I understand why this hurts. The other part of why this hurts is that the other part of why this is not a big deal, though, is that, again, they're just not that good. The Sky. I mean, they're not that good. They are not going to go to the playoffs, and they wouldn't have anyway, with or without Courtney VanderSloot, okay? And the Sky are getting a lot of coverage that's somewhat unwarranted, given how mediocre they are as a team. Through 7 games, they're 2-5. All right? They're not even close to making the playoffs when they are in the, particularly when, and this is a big one, they're in the same division as New York and Connecticut. So when you take those two things into account, they were never actually going to make the playoffs this year. They were never going to be competing for the playoffs. But a lot of people were thinking they were. But yeah, so they're in, I'm sorry, not Connecticut, excuse me, Atlanta. They're in the same conference as Atlanta and New York. So yeah, the Atlanta Dream and New York Liberty are the ones that would make it there. Then there's the Fever, who are significantly better. The Mystics are better. The Sky are the worst team in the East, okay? They're not making the playoffs. Courtney VanderSloot should probably just hang it up. She wasn't going to make it. Why is this even news, WNBA related wise, though? It's because of Angel Reese. People want to make the Angel Reese-Caitlin Clark rivalry happen so much. Stop trying to make it happen. It's not going to happen. Here's why. 2 reasons. Both are actually overrated. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are both overrated when you look at the metrics. This rivalry is a rivalry of bad versus good, but not great versus great. Courtney VanderSloot's injury to Chicago doesn't matter, because the Chicago Sky are overrated and Angel Reese is overrated. Angel Reese is a liability for the Chicago Sky. She has negative 0.3 win shares, negative 0.069 win shares per 48 minutes, and has had a 5-point drop in her PER so far this year to below 13. Why are we talking about her like she's some sort of star? She's not even close to a star. She's not close to a superstar. Angel Reese is not that good of a player in the WNBA as of right now. Now, to be fair, again, it's only her second year, just like Caitlin Clark, which we'll get to. But Angel Reese, as a whole, as a player right now, is not a good player 5 games into her second year in the WNBA. But Caitlin Clark is getting too much coverage too, given her production. Her win shares are not top 20 in the WNBA. Her PER is not top 20 in the WNBA. Excuse me, her PER is only number 19. So she's outside of the top 20 in win shares and outside of the and number 19 in PER. So let's just break this down for a minute. Caitlin Clark Angel Reese is the most overrated, overblown rivalry in the history of professional sports. Caitlin Clark doesn't have a top 20 rating in win shares in the WNBA, and she's not even top 15 in PER. Angel Reese is literally a liability for the Chicago Sky, having negative 0.3 win shares, negative 0.069 win shares per 48 minutes, and has had a 5-point drop in her PER so far from last year. Yet this is the most talked about rivalry in the WNBA. That's ridiculous. Give me Breanna Stewart versus A'ja Wilson. That's a rivalry. 2 elite players, 2 superstars vying for championships, 2 maybe best players in the WNBA to this point. That is what a real rivalry is about. Don't give me Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese to this point. Maybe Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese will get there. Well, maybe Caitlin Clark will get there. Caitlin Clark actually could get there because she's a really, really good player. She just has to cut down on her turnovers and stay healthy. Fair enough. Angel Reese will never be on that level, though. She won't. This rivalry is stupid. It's dumb. It's a waste of time. And with that, the Chicago Sky losing Courtney VanderSloot is not relevant to the WNBA because Chicago would have actually had to be in the running for something for that to be an issue. And they're not. Okay? They're not. And they're not going to be. And when you have Angel Reese being such a liability, this just isn't going to happen, guys. It's not going to happen. And I think we have to accept the fact that as of right now, still, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese aren't deserving of the hype that this rivalry is getting. People will say Angel Reese herself because she's not good enough, but Caitlin Clark's not good enough either to this point. Caitlin Clark could be good. By the way, Caitlin Clark has a much better chance of being a top 5, top 3, top 2 best player in the WNBA. Angel Reese will never even get close. She's not even all-star caliber, okay? And as of right now, neither belong among the top of the WNBA. The WNBA should be A'ja Wilson's league as of right now. And Angel Reese is so bad that the Chicago Sky can't rally around her with Courtney VanderSloot out, but they couldn't do it with her in. So they're not going to be good. I wouldn't worry about them. It's a waste of time. And this Angel Reese Caitlin Clark rivalry needs to be tabled until one of them shows promise of being one of the more elite players in the WNBA, which neither of them has showed to this point. All right. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to my Sports Nightcap podcast. Went a little long today because we had a lot to talk about from the weekend. Obviously, game 2 of the NBA Finals wrapped up as Oklahoma City dominated. I still say OKC in 6. You guys, please hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment. Turn on your notifications. Tell a friend. We are building something great here at Sports Nightcap. I want you to be a part of it because I'm having a lot of fun doing this. And I love everybody that tunes in. So please give me your thoughts. Please join in the debate. We want to keep this going. Again, like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell a friend, tell me what you think. Let's get this thing rolling. You guys have been incredible. You guys have a great rest of your Sunday. I will be back on tomorrow. I am live every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. Typically roughly 10:30 to 11 at night, but the hard live moment is if there's a big sporting event that night, I go live right after it ended, which is why I went live right after the NBA Finals tonight. So you guys have a great rest of your evening. Enjoy Monday getting back to work. I can't wait to tune in with you guys in tomorrow again with Caleb Calhoun. This has been a production of Sports Nightcap.